Welcome back to the Shade Tree Garage, guys. Just finished washing the Chevy, getting ready for the cruise day tomorrow afternoon. Whiskey City Cruisers gather the fourth Sunday of every month at a local home improvement center in the parking lot. Tomorrow the weather will be beautiful. It's going to be about 80 degrees, perfect cruising weather. I've been trying to make this video now for a couple of days without much luck. I intended to do this several months ago and kind of give you a 6-month update on my progress with the Chevy. Of course, I bought it in the first week of January, and it's been an adventure ever since. And I find myself more and more enamored with the car. It's not perfect, not at all, but it's my Chevy, and I really enjoy it. In a way, I'm kicking myself for the last dozen or 13 years that I sold my first 55 that I had for 32 years and sold it about, I don't know, 13 years ago, and always regretted it and continuously have regretted it. And anyway, I ended up, let me see if I can adjust this lighting a little better. Oh, that's too much. All right, that's a little better. I ended up buying a friend of mine, deceased friend of mine's 56 Plymouth Belvedere, and it's over on the other side of the shop. Not realizing at the time that finding parts for the car was like hunting hen's teeth. There virtually are no reproduction parts to speak of for a 56 Plymouth of any model. You pretty much have to fabricate them or get them out of a junkyard or eBay. And that was quite a surprise from somebody who owned a Tri-Five for 30 plus years. Anyway, learned a lesson there. Don't buy an off-brand car without reproduction parts, or you're going to do a lot of fabricating. All right. Bought the Chevy the first week of January, and it needed work. It arrived with a classic, what's called a classic car title in Kentucky, and this basically establishes ownership, but not privileges for road use. In other words, it's a title for a car that's a project and not finished yet. Once you have it finished, then the procedure here in Kentucky is you have the car inspected by the local sheriff's office. And it's called a safety inspection, but that's a bit of a misnomer because the whole purpose of the inspection is to make sure that the car isn't stolen out of some other state. And the basic process is they check the VIN number on the title versus the VIN number on the car, and the two must match. And a little history in Kentucky. Kentucky was the hotbed of laundering car titles and ownership for many years, going back into the 50s, 60s, 70s, right up until the early 80s, when a major reform was accomplished in vehicle titling. After the reform in vehicle titling, it tightened up the rules for transferring vehicles. Prior to that, it was pretty loosey-goosey. There was a lot of abuse of the system, and therefore Kentucky was one of the favorite states for car thieves to bring a car in, change its identity, title it to someone else, and sell it, and it was gone. I purchased the Chevy in January and began working on it to get it roadworthy. Now, I took safety inspection to mean just that, safety inspection. And so I made sure there were, the main problem I had with the Chevy at first is missing 3 windows. And let me tell you, brother, that was a very cool ride on the first week of January at sub-freezing temperatures to get the car home. But I did. I bundled up. I was ready for it. And so then I had to ordered new glass for the sides and the doors. and worked on it, getting that installed. My first 55 I purchased in 1979, and the glass was good. Now, I did have one cracked window, but all the fuzzies, all the weather stripping, everything was excellent on it. And in fact, I had the front and rear windows taken out for the painting bodywork process, and had the glass put back in with new rubber weather stripping. But the rest of it was in great shape. Door weather stripping, everything. Not so much with this one. Of course, I bought this car more than 40 years later after my first 55. So take 40 years more of wear and tear on gaskets and window fuzzy tracks and everything. So it needed updates, seriously. Anyway, I accomplished that, and I had another list of things to check off. Number one, make sure the wiring was good. When I got the car, it had a parasitic drain of the battery. Something was draining the battery overnight from full charge to zero overnight. And it turned out all the evidence I had, all the testing pointed to the alternator. It had a well-used alternator that had been around for a long, long time. It had an internal regulator. It wasn't one external. My first 55s was external, but once you have those things set, they generally will work well until something goes wrong. And mine worked fine. In fact, I've got the original alternator over in the garage. Though I'm not planning to use it on anything, since it has no built-in rectification or regulation. The parasitic drain pointed to the alternator, but it was not the alternator. The car had a new wiring harness installed several years ago, and the alternator was it's kind of considered a one-wire alternator, but it had three wires actually. It had the two-pin wiring on a plug that plugged into the one corner of it. And so after that, and I couldn't understand what was wrong. My test showed the alternator was draining the battery, almost half an amp drain. I'm thinking, surely it can't be a wiring error. I mean, they've had this car wired for 2 or 3 years. They'd know if it was a wiring error, right? Not so much. It turned out to be that the two wires on the two-pin plug were reversed. So after you ran the car and shut it off, if you left the alternator connected, plugged in, it would run down the battery overnight to zero. So I was rather amazed to find that was the problem, but it was, and that fixed it. Now, in the process, I thought, well, it's got to be the alternator. I figured it had a rectifier bad. So somehow this well-used GM alternator, AC Delco alternator, was draining the battery. So I ordered a high amperage chrome alternator with all the chrome mounting hardware, and put it on. It looked great, and it still looks great. It wasn't the problem. It turned out to be the wiring on the two-pin plug, and that fixed it right up. I had the option of returning all that chrome, but I like it. I like the chrome. It looks good, and I kept it. Anyway, some other issues with the car. It had a set of gauges, Sun Pro gauges. They were the small 2-inch gauges, and the printing on them was tiny. And it wasn't mounted under the dash. It had been. Well, it had been. One screw was holding it, and it just flopped all around. So I took that screw out and set it on the floor of the hump. But then there was something wrong. The way the flat part of the bezel should have been mounted up against the dash, right? And with the curves at the bottom. Well, when I laid that down on the transmission hump that way, the gauges were upside down. And it took me a little while to realize that whoever put those gauges in installed them upside down. So in order to read the gauges, I had to flip the whole assembly upside down. And I wasn't, the first couple of days I was in the car, I couldn't read the gauges. My eyes are just, mid 65 years old eyes. I just can't read the fine print on these little gauges. So My first upgrade plan was a nice large set of gauges, 2 5/8 inch, very visible, very legible, odometer, etc. And so I bought a set of odometer gauges with the big three on aftermarket gauges: oil pressure, water temperature, and it used to be amperage, but these days it's voltage. Now, I've never really believed the voltmeter was that useful. In my Tri-Five Chevy years ago, I had a 4 gauge setup that I got from actually J.C. Whitney, and it was a really good set of gauges. And what was really special about the gauges was that they could be, they had about a 25 degree tilt. So you could angle the gauges at the driver so you could get a better, almost straight on view of the gauges. Because if the gauges are pointing over your shoulder and they're flat facing that way, then you're going to get some error in your reading because you're not going to see the needle face front. So you could adjust those gauges, the J.C. Whitney gauges, you could adjust them so you could sit in your seat and just glance over and get a front face. You know, you're looking at the gauges almost on a 90 degree. So, you know, there's not going to be any variance in the gauge. If you look at it from your, sitting in your seat, you're going to get an accurate look at the reading. So those gauges really worked well. Now they were 2-inch gauges, but they were marked really, really well. Of course, my eyes were 40 years younger then too, so that could have something to do with it. All right, so I changed out the gauges, and that was a big improvement. After I got to, and now I still have a lot of work to do on the car. Door panels, rear, inside panels on the back seat, carpet, headliner. Let's see, there's a list of other things. Flooring in the back of the wagon part. It originally had 1/2-inch plywood that was coated with some sort of linoleum, and that's mostly disappeared. There's linoleum left on the back of the fold down back seat. That's the only place there's linoleum, and that seat came out of another Tri-Five wagon. So I have no idea what the original color or type of linoleum was in that back. So I just need to get more sheeting, plywood of some thickness, and put it back down. And then I can put some linoleum. And I've got some ideas for some neat looking, retro looking linoleum too. Early on, when I got the Chevy, something I'd mentioned to my wife, I'd been watching on YouTube videos from the Tri-Five Nationals. Now, the Tri-Five Nationals is an annual show for Tri-Five Chevys, not just passenger cars or wagons, but also pickup trucks, fire trucks, any Chevrolet from 55 through 7. And there were some interesting cars there. And some of my favorite were the gassers because they were there to race on the track. And a lot of people took advantage of that. But the Tri-Five Nationals was a goal from early on. I didn't even have tags on the car yet. And I told my wife about the Tri-Five Nationals. I said, we ought to go. And at the time, we had just gotten rescued a 20-foot camper. And our plan was for her to drive the tow vehicle and the camper down to Bowling Green. Beach Bend Raceway has a campground, and we could have stayed there for no additional expense. But we just, we never had made time to. We had to discuss going to the Tri-Five Nationals back in late January, and my wife wanted to go, and we wanted to camp. We had acquired from the family member a 20-foot. We had acquired from a family member a 20-foot mobile home trailer, or a camper trailer that had belonged to my mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law. And it needed updates. It needed updates. So our plan was to also, update the camper while we're waiting to get the car updated for use as a daily driver, at least daily driver going to the Tri-Five Nationals. And just like any other automotive project, everything takes longer than you think it will. And sometimes you just have other responsibilities that pull time away. So right now, the Tri-Five Nationals kind of interrupted my progress on individual projects on the car. For example, I've got door panels, I've got carpet, and such. So I need to get those done. The rear large colorful Chevy emblem that you see on the front, and also it's on the tailgate. I don't have the tailgate one installed because I've got to get the T handle on the tailgate separated from the inside mechanism that actually actuates the rods that unhook or that open the tailgate. And I've sprayed them with some Crow oil several times, and I think I could probably get it apart without too much trouble. Anyway, like I say, there's no. I was going to make a punch list of things left to do, but I was going to run out of paper before I finished. There's always something left to do when you have a classic car, much less body work. The seller painted this car without fully prepping it, and intentionally so. It was probably 5 different primer colors, maybe some original paint somewhere. And his goal was to sell it, and he wanted it to look good. So he painted it a two-tone, kind of a turquoise and a light gray top. And the body work isn't done. It looks, on a closer inspection, it looks fairly rough. But he had no intention of refining it. He just wanted it painted. It just wanted it painted because he knew if he painted it, even if the bodywork was rough, it would still look better. And he was trying to optimize, I think, his investment, and that worked out really well. The car has new tires on it. It's got stock rims on the front and wide steel rims on the back, and it really is a striking use of the original steel wheels with hubcaps. And the car has been lowered. It's got 2-inch drop spindles in front and 2-inch drop blocks on the leaf springs. Now that's caused a lot of heartache on my part. The lowered leaf springs, the lowering blocks cause an issue with rubbing and dragging frequently. For example, getting in and out of my garage and even getting out of the driveway, the exhaust system drags. And it sounds like it's tearing out the bottom of the car, but you know it isn't. I'm waiting for that to happen, and it might. The exhaust system is setting low. If I have to have it redone, I want the exhaust pipes to hug the floorboard more. Now, the seller told me that the headers on this thing aren't really designed for low clearance use. In other words, if this was the factory ride height, nothing would be rubbing. So I have considered getting ceramic coated ram's horn exhaust manifolds and to replace the headers when the time comes. There are block huggers that would cause less problem too. The ram's horns are the simple solution. And do I really need headers? I mean, I like the look of them, but I also like the look of the ram's horns because they're probably the best flowing factory exhaust manifolds you're going to find, unless you're looking at some of the modern Chevy LS motors. All right, overall, the Tri-Five Nationals were hot, hot, and very hot. I never washed the car. They'd had some bird dookie on the hood that didn't come completely off when I washed it here. And my plan was to hand wash it down in Bowling Green, but it just didn't work out. And I was fine with that. I was just happy to be there. Anyway, tomorrow is a Whiskey City Cruisers event, and it's going to be beautiful weather. I'm hoping for a big turnout. Hopefully I'll get to shoot some content there and talk to some other car owners. So that's, and it's funny because I think of one reason I want to go is I want to talk to a fella named Martin. He's got a two-door, I think it's a 150, 55 Chevy 150 two-door sedan, and that he has raced for many years. And I need to check his clutch pedal assembly out, because one of the things I discovered on the road back and forth from the Tri-Five Nationals was my clutch pedal was chattering, at road speed. And my first thought was that there's a problem with the clutch, and I was getting very concerned about it. But then I realized if I lift up with my left foot, hold the clutch up, it no longer chattered. It didn't shake or anything. And so looking at the assembly manual and then looking, at the clutch assembly under the dash, there's a return spring on that clutch pedal that's supposed to pull it up and keep tension on it, so it doesn't just flop around and vibrate. My car doesn't have that spring. Now, the only problem I found, and I don't know if there's adjustment on the throw of that pedal, if I pull up with my foot on the clutch pedal to tension it a little bit, it gets it comes way high, higher than I think it probably should. And in fact, to push the clutch down, I'd have to pull my foot up quite a bit higher than the level of the brake pedal. I found out that comparing the assembly manual with the actual clutch assembly under the dash on my Tri-Five, there's no return spring on the pedal. The pedal just sits there at rest, and it's actually the clutch tension from the clutch pedal and that linkage that it's sitting on. It's not being held tight against the upper stop the way the manual spring would. So running down the road at 60, 65 miles an hour, you can hear that pedal chatter. That's what I call it. It's just vibrating metal on metal. But it's not. I don't think it's a serious issue, but it sure sounded serious for several miles. Anyway, so I'm hoping to look at one or more Tri-Fives that'll be in attendance, just because I want to sit down and look at feel what kind of spring they have, because mine has none. However, if you use the type of spring that the manual says, it's going to lift that clutch pedal up higher than it should be. It'd be much higher than the brake level that the brake pedal's on. And I'm not sure I like that idea at all. So there may be some adjustment of the throw of that clutch pedal. And that's what I hope to find out. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it. My next project may be tomorrow or first of the week. I've got to change the starter on my 1987 Dodge pickup truck. It's been sitting here immobile in our garden for 3 years, I guess. And it's been one of those day projects. One of these days because I'm not going to jack it up and work on it in the garden. I don't tempt fate like that. So I wanted to eventually, and I did that this past week, was to pull it out of the garden and pull it up in front of the garage on pavement, on asphalt, so I can get to work on it. All right, now we'll have more up on that later. Weather's going to be beautiful this weekend, so get your classic car out and have fun. We'll see you next time from here in the Shade Tree Garage.